All right, it's a couple days before Christmas, and I have a few days off, so this is a good time for what I call winter planning. When I go through the yard and think about all the things I'm going to be doing soon, such as repotting, eventually air layering, some design work. Um, this is a large ilex I have that I plan on once it starts after the frost date here. And keep in mind, I'm in 9B zone here in Florida in the beginning of winter. Um, so, my nights are just starting to get where I have some evenings in the 40s, and so I'm going to be doing multiple things. So I'm going to walk through the yard and discuss what I'm thinking, what I'll be doing. This is a good time for that for people in this zone. Um, this is something you can plan earlier, maybe earlier on if you're in a colder zone, or if you're in a tropical zone. Still, some of this you'll be considering around now, because you still, even in a tropical zone, you'll have seasons where there's like a semi-dormancy happens on certain trees. All right, so this large ilex, my plan is probably late February or so. I'll go in and do a good heavy pruning, cut back, and some design work, maybe a little carving. Um, this is my ilex with a 2 foot and a barry at the base. I'll go through my yard. Most of my bonsai are in a little yard on the other side, but I've got some things I'm considering for air layers, which I'll probably do in April. Many up north will do that in May. So this is a brush cherry tree, and this is probably an air layer I'll do, which I can make a semi-cascade out of that. I have this large branch I'm considering air layering, which could be, if I have that upright, could make a nice literati style tree. These are some cuttings I took and rooted for plants for the landscaping. The sun's pretty bright, so let's get into the other part of the yard where I have my bonsai. You can see most of my deciduous trees have lost or are in the process of losing leaves. This is a large hornbeam which I redesigned from an informal upright into a semi-cascade. I have my ficus, willow leaf ficuses, which this is around the time I start moving stuff into the greenhouse. As I said, I'm getting evenings where it starts to get into the 40s, and I definitely get my tropicals into the greenhouse by the time we get anything that's a chance of being below 40 degrees here. Now, I rarely get a frost here. Over the years, when I first moved here 20 years ago, I would get, a little bit of freezing weather and stuff at night, but haven't had that for years here. So even though I'm 9B, I'm almost a zone 10. Got my ficuses. My ficuses and tropicals. This is probably this weekend. I'll start moving stuff into the greenhouse. My junipers, started to work on them, do some pruning and light wiring. Usually if I'm going to do anything severe to them, I usually do it during January in this area. Farther north, you'd wait till later. You wouldn't want to expose it to any kind of freezing if you're going to do heavy work. Brazilian rain tree, so that'll be put into the greenhouse also. My azaleas are starting to put on flower buds. Some I'll let flower. I have a tree over here that I made a previous video of, this large azalea, when I discussed buying a plant at a nursery in a previous video, and this is starting to set flower buds. But I plan on in January, probably late January, doing some heavy work on that. So I'm not going to worry about keeping all the flowers, but it looks like I might enjoy flowers for a short time before I do the heavy work. You hear about doing work on flowering plants after they flower, but it depends what you're going to do, how severe you're going to be, what type of plant you have, if they flower early in the season or late. So if this flowers early enough, I might get to enjoy it before I do the heavy work. But heavy work will be soon. Air layering planting. This is a good time for that. As I showed you on the other side of the house, I've got a weeping holly here in my yard. The sun's so bright it's hard to see, but I've got a nice branch here that has on this weeping style tree that I plan on air layering. So that'll be fun. I'll be doing that probably April. Some of my junipers, you can see I've been cleaning them out, doing a little light wiring, some pruning. Here's a literati forest I'm working on. I'll have to check this video when I watch it later in the shade. There's too much sun, I might have to redo it. Let's see. Things to do. I'll look through my trees that I know I'll have to repot. But right now, I don't believe I have anything that's actually pushing out of the pot. So there's nothing that I desperately need to repot. But this is an azalea that I had repotted, and the leaves were turning yellow. Well, before repotting, it was suffering. I was going to put it in the convention exhibit as part of a Shohin display, but the leaves were all yellow and wasn't looking healthy. But I'm glad to see the leaves are actually greening up, looking better after I repotted it. Let's see. Got my blueberry. I'm looking forward to getting some blueberries I can eat off of that. I still have maples that haven't lost their leaves, but they're starting to have some yellow leaves fall off. Usually this is the time of year. Here's a Crepe Myrtle. Lost most of its leaves. Usually this is when I'll go through the deciduous trees and actually at the end of the year, beginning of January, make sure I pull the remaining leaves off. So try to, in case, you try to help them feel like they had a real dormancy. In my zone, that's the issue. Some of the more northern type plants, they don't really, some get very, don't really get the amount of cold dormancy that they need. But I try to pick varieties which are more dependent on the shorter light period versus the colder temperature period. Here's a forest that I just recently pruned back, a bald cypress. And you can see one of my first trees that lost its leaves was this red bud, and now it's actually been without leaves for a while, and it's actually starting to leaf out and form flower buds. So that's one of my first trees. I also have an Akami flowering cherry here that usually flowers early, but no, hasn't started yet. That'll probably be next month. I have plans. I have a lot of hackberries that a couple years from seed. I plan on putting them together, making some kind of binding them together, making Mayogi style trees out of them. Another name for that is octopus style. A lot of planning. I don't see anything I need to desperately repot. I did some repotting last year. There are some things that if they start looking nice, I might put them into nicer bonsai pots than what they're in. Here's a long dwarf Fukian tea. I have some trees I can start working on. That'll be, April or May. I can work on that when it's warmer. But right now is a good time to work on junipers. Some of my little junipers that from cuttings, I can put some wire on. And when they're young, you can really do a lot with the wire and make them interesting. All right. I don't think there's anything else I need to show you. Just it's a good time of year to do your planning, what you need to repot. Maybe repotting this spruce pine because I want to change the angle a little bit, but I probably won't do much in the way of root work or anything to it. All right, so I'll catch you on my later videos. Take care.